So we're going to begin this special Diyache Kala, which we call here on legal holidays. I'm always fond of saying over, the Pasuk says in Tehillim, Achas sha'alti meis Hashem, oisa avake, shifti b'beis Hashem. So I once heard from going to Baruch Mordechai Rachi Shlita, he asked the kasha in the name of his shver, Rav Meir Chodesh, the Mashkiach, Chevri Yeshiva. What does it mean? Achas sha'alti meis Hashem, oisa avake. I have one thing to ask from Hashem, and this is what I would ask. It seems redundant, and we're repeating again. Achas sha'alti meis Hashem, shifti b'beis Hashem. What do we underline again by saying oisa avakesh? So Meir Chodesh said, and Baruch Mordechai son-in-law said it over in his name. People can't be full-time in the Bais Medrash. Not everybody's zoche to be full-time in the Bais Medrash. We have obligations. We have to be mefanos hamishpachas. We have to interact with the world. So what are we saying? Shifti b'veis Hashem kol yimei chayei. Seems to be incorrect. That it's not possible. So he said, no, a person says one thing. Achas shalti meis Hashem. There's one thing I asked from Hashem. Oisa avake shifti b'veis Hashem. I should be able to always be mavakesh that I want to be b'veis Hashem. Obviously, my life's responsibilities and obligations don't allow for it. I'm asking one she'ela from Hashem that my oisa avake should be shifti b'veis Hashem. And that's what we're striving for. How do you know if that sentiment is true? How could one ascertain that that's really his inner feelings and what he really wants? You know how you know that? What you do when you don't have to be at work. What you do when you have your free time. That's how you could measure yourself and see what your real oisa avakesh is. If your oisa avakesh is shifti b'veis Hashem. So you measure yourself and you can strive for that feeling of the oisa avakesh shifti b'veis Hashem by ascertaining what you would do when it's not, when you have your free time. I think that's why it's even more important than the learning itself on that day is the feeling and the emotion of pulling you into the Beis HaMedrash, and especially on learning Torah, Be'iyun, with a little extra effort, using our minds, our intellect, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us, the Ata Chaynein L'Adam Das, to be able to do that, especially when it comes Hanukkah. Hanukkah is the Ner in the middle of the Golus. The Rambam calls Hanukkah mitzvah chavivehi ad ma'od. It was the last nest that happened to Klal Yisrael. There weren't even Nevi'im, and it was set up by the Klal Yisrael's feelings itself. That's why we feel more attached to it. There's a chavivus, there's a nostalgia, there's a connection to the Ner Hanukkah. So what better way to celebrate the Ner Hanukkah? And that was the minig b'chol Yisrael. People say it in a humorous way. You know, what's the terutzim on the Beis Yosef's kasha? Beis Yosef like that kasha. And through Klal Yisrael, there's been so many numerous terutzim. If the Beis Yosef would have said one teretz, it would have closed the door. He himself said 3 terutzim, so that opened the door to thousands of terutzim. Because Hanukkah's each door has new terutzim. Each door has new ways of looking and looking into the Gemara. Ein Beis Medrash b'lo chiddush. And that's so we'll begin with a shaila. We'll begin with a question on Hilchos Chanukah, on the inyan of Hilchos Chanukah, of Ner Chanukah. I saw brought down in Sefer Shailos v'Tshuvos v'Hanhagos of Rav Moshe HaGoyen Rav Moshe Sternbuch Shlita. It's in Simin Reish Tes Vav Ois Tes Vav, and he poses a question. We know this chinuch and mitzvahs in Kol HaTorah Kula. What is the zman for chinuch for Ner Chanukah? You have a little boy or girl in your house. What's the? So he says he thinks the pashtus would be if the boy or girl know how to light a candle. So if they know how to light a candle, that's the shir of chinuch. Just like the shir of chinuch is yedeya l'naneya halulav. If you could take a lulav, it's good. If you could eat matzah, that's the shir. If you could light a candle, that's the shir. But then he poses the question and he says, Nira, the l'chayret saruch sheyavin Inyan Chanukah. That when he lights the candle, he has to know that there's something going on about the nes, and he has to be able to connect and be cognizant that he's doing it for the nes, and that's the Ner Chanukah. And he brings rayas that would be the din. The question is why? Why would Ner Chanukah require somebody to do the Ner Chanukah with a kavanah, with a meaning, more than the eating of matzah or the taking of lulav or any other mitzvah? So that's the question I want to begin today's shir on. Why would that be that Ner Chanukah, for some reason, would need a higher bar of this kavanah more than somebody else's kavanah, more than other mitzvahs? So v'hanira loymar. I want to bring another question. We know, we just spoke out here in the Honashir, that the halacha is Ner Ishu Beisoy is the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah. One Ner is really sufficient for Ner Chanukah. So if you have 20 people living in your house, one Ner the first night, one Ner the second night, one Ner the third night is sufficient. And that would be etc. till the 8th night. That's the Iker mitzvah of Ner Chanukah. However, there's Mahadrim and a Mahadrim. So we light Ner L'chol Echod Ve'echod. So if on the first night, and then there's Mahadrim and a Mahadrim. Mahadrim and a Mahadrim would mean you light for each person of the house. So that means if it would be the first night and there's 20 people in the house, you would light 20 candles. If it would be, and the second night, really you should light 40 candles. The third night, you light 60 candles. And you keep going up until on the 8th night, you'll have 160 candles, whatever you'll have. So therefore, that'll be your Ner Chanukah. So you light for each person for each night. Taisa asks the question, how could that be? If you'll come by, let's make it easier, there are 10 people in a house. You'll come by the third night, and there are 30 candles. You won't know it's the third night. It could be the second night, and there are 15 people in the house. It could be the first night, and you have 30 people in the house. It could be the 5th night, and you have 6 people in the house. I'm not an accountant, but or an actuary. There could be many different variables. So you defeated the purpose. If there is a quality of Ner Chanukah to be able to see the nights, if you're lighting that amount of candles, you're defeating the purpose because you don't see how many candles, how many nights there are through the candles. So Taisus, therefore, he doesn't believe in this. Either you light for the people, and if there's 10 people, you light 10 the first night, 10 the second night, 10 the third night, and you don't exponentially add to it. Or you light just for the nights, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Comes out a interesting quirk in Taisus that it could most times, Mahadrim and a Mahadrim would cost less than Mahadrim. Okay, but that's besides the point. The Rambam holds the way we do it. He goes 10, not the way we do it, the way we said originally, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, if you have 10 people in the house. And that's what you do. Taisus says you got to see the nights. The Rambam doesn't. The Ramah came up with a Gevaldik Eitz. And the Ramah said, no, let's let every person light his own candle. So if you have 10 people in the house, you light 10. But buy everybody a menorah. Menorah 1, menorah 2, menorah 3. When you walk by, you'll see 10, but 10 separate. The second night, you'll see 20, but you'll see 2, 2, 2, 2, and 2. So you could have your cake and eat it too. You could have the nights, and you could have the people. So therefore, that's what he holds you should do. And that's our minig Ashkenazi, that we do that. We make separate menorahs, and we let every person see the menorah, and he can see the nights. But if we think deeply into it, what was the Shittas HaRamah? Really, it's one big hadlaka on the first night of 10. We're being very generous, and we're letting everybody light. But really, in essence, you know what it is? It's Ner number 1, as if I would light 1, 2, 3, 4. I would be lighting it. I'm being generous, and I'm letting other people light it. Zok Ramah, so therefore, I can have both of them together. But in essence, when my son is lighting the ner, he's really lighting, according to the Ramah, ner number 2. When the second son is lighting, or daughter, then it's ner number 3. So then it comes out to be separate lightings on each one. And each one is a separate lighting. And that's what it is, ner number 3. So that's what it is. That means like this. Really, there was supposed to be a hadlok of 10 neras if there are 10 people in the house. Yeah. And really, the balabayis was supposed to light 10. The Ramah said, but we don't see how many people, we don't see what night it is, because we'll see 10. So the Ramah have an eitzah, make separate menorahs. So you make 1, 1, 1, 1. So in the sum total, you'll have 10. But we'll let each person light his own. That's the Ramah. So really, it's one happy hadlokah of 10. So the Ramah, if it's a happy hadlokah of 10, so then what would be the din? So the second person is lighting ner number 2. The third person is lighting ner number 3. And that's really what comes out. So Kivega comes to this from a side effect. Let's say it's the second night of Hanukkah, and I'm so excited to light the ner Hanukkah. I forgot to make a bracha on ner number 1. I'm lighting myself. I live in my own house by myself. So I got so excited to light the ner, I walked up to the menorah thinking about Hanukkah, and I lit ner number 1. After I lit that ner number 1, what do? I didn't make a bracha. So what do? Could you make a bracha before you light ner number 2? You can't. Why? Because you were yoitze ner issue beisai when you lit ner number 1. The second ner is gravy. The second ner is what? Hiddur. So Hiddur by definition is extra credit. You can't say Asher Kitshanu b'mitzvaysa b'tzivanu on Hiddur. Hiddur by definition does not fall under the tent, into the tent of Itzivanu. Let me just clear this ice. Mira Pashut, that on Hiddur mitzvah you can't make a brach. So you can't make a brach on the second. Kivega has a whole arichas. Maybe I'm still in the middle of the first because it's still lit. But I don't want to go down that road with Kivega. I just want to posit from Rabbi Kivega. What do you say?
Why doesn't it bother Kivega the first night, 10 people, each one like...
Oh, what? We're getting to that. Wait, we're getting to that. So first he's establishing, you can't make a brach on Hiddur mitzvah. Vitmahani. According to the Ramah, how could your son make a bracha? The son making the bracha is in essence ner number 2. So if it's ner number 2, the son is in the same position that you would have been if you didn't make a bracha on 1 and then you're lighting 2. So how do we allow a person to make a bracha on the son, or whoever that second person is, to make a bracha on the second menorah? L'cheira, he's in the same place as ner, as the person who would be one person and lighting the second ner. Should really stop right there. That's so good. You should stop right there. But so l'cheira, the second person is not. Nira, that the second person lighting has in mind, I am not being yoitze ner Chanukah with my father. He has kavona lehepuch, that I don't want to be yoitze ner Chanukah, which really, first of all, takes away the whole warm and fuzzy feeling of the whole ner Chanukah. I'm standing there saying I am not being yoitze, but also it's a kasha. L'cheira, it's defeating the whole purpose. If you're saying it's one big hadlokah of 10, and I'm saying I'm not being yaitze with you, I'm in effect separating myself. You have to say, Kivega holds, you can have both components at the same time. That means you could say, I am not yaitze with you, but somehow in the sum total, we're all being mishtatif together. Somehow it's like, somehow there could be a dichotomy. You can separate it. You can say there's number 1, number 2, number 3 in the number 1, number 2, number 3. But at the same time, each one is being yaitse independently of the other one. Kiveg is saying a tifa lumdis, and if you look inside the chadu, what? Oh, no, you're saying, no, I'm going to come to that point in a second. But first I'm establishing, right.
And you say amen.
No, but here it's more. Here it's more. I am connected to him because I really have to light 10. Just, I'm connected to all of them, so we have in sum total 10. Even though each person is not being yaitzu with the other one, so you're having like two facets coming together. But that's not the point I want to speak about. And this is also parenthetically, I want to bring out, I don't know, I was brought up in a religious home, Baruch Hashem, with dairis of minhagim. Nobody ever told me not to have kavanah, not to be yaitzer. Why didn't they teach this to us in yeshiva? They should have told us, have kavanah, not to be yaitzer. Are you saying maybe b'chlal? It's a so I thought first, it's part and parcel of lighting the second one with a bracha. The mere fact that I have in mind to light with a bracha means I'm having kavanah not to be yaitzer. So if I'm having kavanah not to be yaitzer, even though it's like a passive kavanah, it's not a proactive kavanah lehepach. So Mela, that's why, maybe like with Sfir Saima, so you would have that then. Even though the Rav Shulchan Aruch and Aruch Chaim Siman Tov Pei Tes, the Rav Shulchan Aruch tells us, in order to have kavanah not to be yaitzer, you need a proactive negative. You need a positive negative. You need to be able to say, I don't want to be yaitzer. In Hilchos Sfir Saima, he says that. But we have to say, no, you positive negative mean with your person, it's not enough to think, I will be doing the mitzvah myself, so therefore I'm not having kavanah to be yaitzer with you. In order not to be yaitzer with somebody else's kiddush, you have to say to yourself, I am not being yaitzer. If you're in somebody's house and you have kavanah to make kiddush yourself, according to the Rav Shulchan Aruch, that's not enough. If you're standing Friday night and you want to make your own kiddush, it's not enough just to think, I want to make my own kiddush. You have to proactively think, I will not be yaitzer kiddush with him. But Al Kulpanim, Rebbe Kiva says this, so it's a kavanah lehepach. So I saw in the Sefer Birchas Avram from Avram Erlinger, Zechat Tzalach Baruch, was just niftar. He asks on this Rebbe Kiva, I don't understand. There's a whole machlekes in Masechtas Rosh Hashanah. We just had it in the Daf Hayeni. If mitzvahs are tzrichas kavanah, or mitzvah tzrichas kavanah. According to the Mandam of mitzvah tzrichas kavanah, there's a big machlekes or rishonim. Could you have kavanah lehepach? It's not so pashut. We are so conditioned that there is such an animal called kavanah lehepach. The Turei Even holds very vehemently there's no such din. If mitzvahs are tzrichas kavanah lehepach doesn't help. If you did the mitzvah, you did the mitzvah. I'm saying it's a very wild sheet, and we're conditioned. But according to Rebbe Kiva, that's part and parcel of every Chanukah. The Turei Even should have asked, 1 second, how do you say you don't have kavanah? In the Takon of Ner Chanukah is muchach, there's such a din as kavanah lehepach. Frank the Birchas Avram, how do we put our act together? How do we say that it's built into Chanukah that you have to have kavanah lehepach? How could you have kavanah lehepach? L'cheireh, it doesn't apply. The whole din of kavanah lehepach happens to be parenthetically. I want to say there's a famous Pnei Yeshua in Masechtas Shabbos that says Chanukah is comparable to mezuzah, and if Chanukah is comparable to mezuzah, so that means the whole year you need a mezuzah biyamin. Your house needs it. On Chanukah you need your mezuzah biyamin, and you need Chanukah b'smoil. That means it's a din in the house, the Pnei Yeshua learns. And there's a Tois in Masechtas Sukkah, Taf Mem Bav. It's not a Chayvis Gavra, it's a Chayvis Bai. So I once said a good joke. I said, there's people, many communities, our communities, they have a problem. They daven Friday night in one shul, Shabbos morning in a different shul, Shabbos mincha in a different shul, and Motzei Shabbos in somebody's basement, whatever. So they're in different shuls. Then they're building a beautiful house, and they're making a Chanukas Habayis, and they're being conveyed to mezuzahs. So on the main beautiful front door, they want to be mechabed thereof with clapping in the mezuzah, with nag in the mezuzah. But they have a problem. They have 5 rabbonim who they daven by. So who should be mechubed to put it in? So it creates problems. So I have a very good idea. There are 10 people who live in the house. So say, I have kavanah not to be yetzer with your mezuzah. The other person will have a kavanah not to be yetzer. So you'll put up one mezuzah. That's for one person. You'll put up another mezuzah. You'll put up 5 mezuzahs. If you have kavanah not to be yetzer. Obviously, that's absurd. You can't have kavanah not to be yetzer mezuzah because mezuzah chayv is bias. How could you have kavanah not to be yetzer in Chanukah? How do you have kavanah not to be yetzer in Chanukah? Why would there be a kavanah if it's a chayv is bias? But the bottom line is, it seems that by Chanukah, there's some reason that kavanah plays a very strong role. And even if in every mitzvah you would not have kavanah lehepech, over here by Ner Chanukah, you would be able to have kavanah lehepech. Why is that so? Why is the halacha that by Chanukah it's so important, this halacha of kavanah? So this I want to say more, b'derech pilpul, b'derech drush, to answer why by Chanukah you would need kavanah. Till here was Masuder, regular, this is straight. If from here, I just want to say b'derech pilpul. We know the halacha is by Chanukah. The sudas of Chanukah don't have the same level of severity in halacha that there is on Purim. Sudas Purim is a chayva. Chanukah, there's no chayva of suda on Chanukah. We like Chanukah parties and we get together, Sibas Mereim, but it doesn't have the same level of darga that there is on Purim. So the Shulchan Aruch, the side of the Shulchan Aruch, they bring it from the Bach and others that say because the Hatzolah of Ner Chanukah was not on the guf, it was a spiritual. Mashenken Purim was a bodily, we were in danger, so therefore we celebrated in a Gashmiistic way. Mashenken on Chanukah, it's Divrei Torah and Tfilas, Vohidoh, Halal Vohidoh, because it was not a parsha of Freik the Turei Zov, and we're just adding a little to the Turei Zov. L'chayr, it was a Shas Hashmad. And by Chanukah, they were telling us, don't keep bris, don't keep chaydish, don't keep milah. Usually the halacha is yarg val yavar, is only on the Gimel Averis Chamuris, the 3 cardinal Averis. What about other mitzvahs and Averis? Is yavar val yarek, bikuch nefesh. However, if it's a Shas Hashmad is mechayiv, meets on everything, even on a bittul asay, pashtus. Gemara's mashrim sech Shabbos, tafkuf lamed amud aleph. Even on tefillin, there would be a din of yarek val yavar. Freik the Turei Zov, it was a Shas Hashmad. So they would have stood up for the Shas Hashmad. So if they would have stood up for the Shas Hashmad, so therefore it would be, also their lives would be in danger. So what's the teretz of the Bach? That your lives weren't in danger. Your lives were in danger. Zok the Imre Emes, the Gerer Rebbe. A gewaltige teretz. Zok the Imre Emes. Now, this is in contrast to many of the ways we were brought up, but I'm just going to explain it in this way. The Imre Emes says, if someone's life is in danger and he's going to kill you because you're a Jew, so that's Kedoshim, that's Ta'id al-Kiddush Hashem. He says, but if there's no choice and you're just going to be killed because you're a Jew, that's true, it's a Kiddush Hashem. But it's different when a Jew would get killed for standing up on a mitzvah. When someone stands up to say, you're not letting me do this, or you're forcing me to eat chazer, it's a Shas Hashmad, and he stands up to that and gets killed, that's the real definition of Kiddush Hashem. When a person stands on his Torah principles and to make sure that he won't give in, that's really the definition of Kiddush Hashem. A person who's getting killed because there's no choice, he's killing as he eats, he's a Kaddish, but he wasn't Makayim the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem. The kiyum of mitzvahs Kiddush Hashem is when you have an option, and deep in your nefesh, you decided to stand up and put your life on the line. So that's the halach of Kiddush Hashem. He says, on Chanukah, this is a very, very radical word. Zok Imre Emes, that if a person on Chanukah would have stood up and got killed, he would have been doing an act of Kiddush Hashem. Zok Imre Emes. Who said that's cause for a celebration because you got saved? Celebration is pikuach nefesh, and your life got saved. Here, the other side of the coin of being saved would have been Kiddush Hashem. So therefore, you would have had a life of Kiddush Hashem. You would have did an act of Kiddush Hashem. So it's very radical, because a person has to run away from Kiddush Hashem, because your life have to do it. But you know what the real reason for that is? Why does a person, if he's in a matzav of Kiddush Hashem, so just let's be a martyr, let's be a... We're not that kind of people. So what does the Imrayamis mean? If a person's in a situation, Kiddush Hashem, obviously you look to save your life, to get out of it. It's not to get out of it to save your life. It's to get out of it because life will bring you more opportunities for Kiddush Hashem. Life could bring out a living Kiddush Hashem. It's just in the scale of things. If you'll be able to go on living, you'll be able to have more Kiddush Hashem. It's not the pshat when you get saved from Kiddush Hashem, it's cause for celebration. It's only a cause for celebration because you'll be able to create more Kiddush Hashem. It's an opportunity for more. And I think it's meduyik in the Gemara. By Hanukkah, it says, the great ness happened and they won the war and they lit the menorah. Lishona acheres. The next year, or some of us would say, years later, kavuhum v'asu yomtiv b'halal v'hidah. Why did they wait? Why did they wait? Either 1 year or numerous years to make a yomtiv b'halal v'hidah. They just got saved. There should have been a celebration. Why is Lishona acheres? The Gemara underlines that. The teretz is just being saved wouldn't be a cause for celebration because it would have been Kiddush Hashem. When they saw, they utilized the ness. They utilized and they capitalized what happened later. And then they were able to build more. That was Lishona Acheres. When they saw that great Kiddush Hashem, it was Kavu v'asu yontif b'halal v'hidah. It's also in this week's parasha, Yosef was in the boyer. And they were Nechoshim ba'akravim. And he saved himself from the Nechoshim ba'akravim. Came out. Years later, he was coming back. When he was coming back to bury Yankov Avinu in Mars Machpelah, Chazal tell us he stopped at the bar. He stopped at the bar and he said, Baruch she'asa li nes b'makam hazeh. Fragte mei simcha. He should have made that bracha right when he came out. Why did it doesn't say, it's not noted in Chazal, he made the bracha. He only made the bracha after he came back, and it even created conflict with his brothers. They got nervous. So Mei Simcha says a teretz. I thought maybe Lefid Vareinu, that's the teretz. He was a much stronger bracha. When he got saved from the Chashim HaKram. He was a private person. Now he saw the whole saga that rolled out from that experience. And all the Kiddush Hashem with the Shvotim and the Mitzrayim. Then he made the bracha she'asuli nes b'makam hazeh. It was a nes after he saw what happened. What happened? So what happened? By Ner Chanukah, there was a loss of Kiddush Hashem. They would have maybe died al Kiddush Hashem. So instead, there was a capitalizing it Lishona Acheres subsequently. You know what our mitzvah of Pesume Nisa is? It's not just a mitzvah. There's a lot of nisim happened. So why don't we make celebrations about the mon, about many different things? We should make it a little light stayed on in the Beis Hamikdash for 8 days, and that's why we do this thing. When we're lighting the Ner Chanukah, we're still filling the tank on the Kiddush Hashem. We're underlining, and we're putting into the tank of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Klal Yisrael lived in order for the later day. We're still doing the Kiddush Hashem of what they did Lashon Acheres. When they created Hanukkah, we're lighting a Ner Hanukkah in order to show Pesume Nisa, we're still doing what the Chazal said, and we're still capitalizing on that life that was given to us. That's what Ner Chanukah is. The Parsume Nisa of Ner Chanukah is not only a mitzvah, it's an affirmation that we're still continuing what was there, and we're still contributing to that Kiddush Hashem, which is the reason of the celebration of Hanukkah, of the Lashon HaAcheres Kovel. Wanted to answer a Gewaldike Kasha. I saw Avnei Nezer asked a great question. Kiddush Hayoim and Ner Hanukkah, Kiddush Friday night on a cup of wine. And you don't have enough money for the wine, and you don't have enough money for Ner Hanukkah. So more Ner Hanukkah. Why? Presume Nisa is on. I want to ask you a question. When we make Kiddush Friday night, maybe sometimes we're in a rush. You know what Kiddush Friday night is? Zeichel L'maaseh Bereishis. It's Eidos to say to our family, we're standing here Friday night, and we're celebrating, and we're affirming that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the whole world. Which was a bigger ness? The candle which stayed lit for 8 days, or the creation of the universe, of the ganze Welt? I mean, I think the ness of Ner Hanukkah pales to this unbelievable bria that the Eibishter made. So Presume Nisa Odif. Welche Presume Nisa? This kasha is asked by the Avnei Nezer in the Tshuva. So Avnei Nezer answers and he says, because maybe Ner Hanukkah, that Maaseh Bereishis is Teva. We don't like to underline the Nes Shabbai. There was no Nes before Brias Olam. Everything was Eibishter. In the Mareches HaTeva, so then there's an Inyan of Nes. But then that's not Nes. Celebrating a Nes would be almost belittling the Eibishter. I think the teretz is no. The Presume Nisa is not Odif. Here it's not just a Presume Nisa. Here it's an obligation to be able to still connect to that Nes. I'm obligated to those people of the days of Hanukkah that I'm still have a chiyuv to be mefarsim the Nes. Because the Nes, the Presume Nisa, is a Kiddush Hashem. And I found that there's a sefer from Reb Daniel Abavli, Mamish Kadman, and he breaks the Torah into like 5 mitzvahs. Ahavas Hashem, Yiras Hashem, Kiddush Hashem. He puts it on the different, just like the Charedim goes according to the Guf. He puts mitzvahs Ner Chanukah, Kiddush Hashem. He puts it under the column of Kiddush Hashem. The teretz is because that's what Ner Chanukah is. Ner Chanukah is Kiddush Hashem. I'm showing that I'm still connected to that door, and I'm fulfilling the Kiddush Hashem, which somehow was sacrificed, and that's why it will be the din. Kain is very good. Ner Chanukah needs kavanah. Because if Ner Chanukah is not a Maaseh mitzvah ba'almeh. Ner Chanukah is a Kiddush Hashem that I'm showing. I'm doing something to connect and to make it that it was reasonable and it was beneficial to have the Nes of Hanukkah. So Mamela, since that's what the din was, so that's what the din of Ner Hanukkah is. So of course you need kavanah. If it's without kavanah, kavanah is the essence of Ner Hanukkah. Parsume Nisa is the essence of Ner Hanukkah. So Mamela, you can't say mitzvahs ain't tzrichas kavanah. Over here, the kavanah is the mitzvah. Because if you do it without kavanah, nothing happened. So Ner Hanukkah got lit. That's good by lulav, by matzah, v'chulu. By Hanukkah, the whole tachlis is the kavanah, knowing why you're doing the mitzvah. You're doing it because the Chazal were masakin. And therefore, you were able to, it's like saying Shema. Right? It's like saying Shema. The chefts of Kabbalah's oil. The same thing is the mitzius, the essence of the Ner Hanukkah. It's very good. Imkain is miyur, boss. Right, that's very good, Rebbe Kivega. You need to have your kavanah to do it. If you don't have the kavanah, you don't have the mitzvah. So this doesn't go into the halacha of kavanah of kol kula. This goes into the halacha of kavanah of the chefts of the mitzvah, the mitzias of the mitzvah. And that's what Ner Hanukkah is. Imkain, I understand there, Moshe Sternbuch, sad. A cotton could eat matzah. A cotton could take lulav if he knows how to do the act. Here it's not motivated by act. It's motivated by the meaning. The kavanah is the essence. So the child has to be in the parsha. And if the child's in the parsha, that would be the din. So it's just very interesting to note. According to the Rambam, you light for all Anshe Beisai. So if there's 10 people in the house, you light 10 neiros for each person in the house. I saw in the back of the Shapsi Frankel Rambam, he says the Rambam doesn't differentiate. And he says, even a Tinnik Ben Yaimai, I saw that Mitzayin from Sfarim, even a Tinnik Ben Yaimai who lights ner is in your house, you have to light for him. So if you have 10 people in the house, including an infant, a boy or a girl, you have to light for him. It's unbelievable because you could give meaning to that little child also. According to the Ramah, if we're lighting like the Rambam, just we're setting it up, so then it should, according to Rav Moshe Sternbuch, only somebody who's already mature enough to be able to be cognizant. So it comes out, it's not totally the Rambam. According to the Ramah, to have this din, you have to be cognizant of it. If you're lighting for somebody else, you could contribute to his meaning. If you're doing it, it wouldn't have that. It wouldn't have that halacha, and that's what would come out according to the Rambam. I want to just finish with one little thing because I hold in the yeshiva world, this became today one of the main things to know about Hanukkah. It's a very subtle, big machlekes, and I'll bring it out this way. If on the 5th night of Hanukkah, you only have 4 candles, what should you light? Should you light 5? Should you light 4? Or should you light 1? The Mishnah Berurah says you light 1. So the Mishnah Berurah, what's 4? 4 is what we call in Latin, nishta hin, nishta her. It's nothing. How could you light 4 if it's the 5th night? So the Mishnah Berurah, and it's a Chayodam, it's in the Beis Halevi, that you don't light. In the Sefer Avi Ezri from Maran Rav Shach, Zechet Tzadok Levracha, he brings this b'shem the Beis Halevi, happens to be, he doesn't quote the Mishnah Berurah. And Rav Shach says, pshitali, anybody who looks at Rav Shach's Svarim, he's very vehement and expressive when he argues. And Rav Shach is a Lomda Shesefer, and he says, Pashut, she'enoi kain. You light as much as you could light. And if it's the 5th night, you have 4, you light 4. If it's the 3rd night, you have 2, you light 2. You do the best you can. And you don't look, we have to be mazbid machlekes. It's not pashut, but that's what Rav Shach.
Would Rav Shach say you use 4 different menorahs to light 1 in each one?
No, you light, I think you light 4. We're talking about when there's one person in a house. You like 4. Zokt. There's a gewaldige sefer called, Shoina Halachas. Shoina Halachas is Reb Chaim Kanievsky Shlita, going to Reb Chaim Kanievsky Shlita wrote a sefer many, many years ago, had a Chazer Mishnah Berurah. And he's Makatzer, it's an unbelievable sefer, Masudar, all the main points in the Mishnah Berurah. Once in a while, if the Chazon Ish, who by Reb Chaim Kanievsky Shlita, Chazon Ish is a Rishon. Anywhere the Chazon Ish argues, so he puts in a parentheses, Chazon Ish Chayla. Kemat doesn't bring another sefer. In the whole sefer, Shon Halach, it's 3 halakim. He doesn't bring another sefer. On this halach in Mishnah Berurah, he brings, if on the 5th night or any type of combination, you only have 4, you light 1, not 4. And then he puts in parentheses, Ayin ba'avi ezri, she'enoi kain. Avi Ezri, Aponovich Sefer, Alom Sefer, and he puts that into the Avi Ezri, and he writes, I am Avi Ezri. The Chaim Kanievsky Shlita. I am Avi Ezri. Zok to Avi Ezri, I am Avi Ezri. So it always bothered me. Then I found that Moshe Mordechai Shulzinker, Zechet Tzadok Levracha from Bnei Brak, wrote a letter to Chaim Kanievsky. And he asked Chaim Kanievsky, Achar Kidus Meya Pomen, after bowing that. What's the pshat over here? You bring the Avi Ezri from all Svarim. You never bring any other sefer. Why over here do you bring the Avi Ezri? So Maran Reb Chaim Kanievsky Shlita wrote him back. He said, because I have a raya in the Chuvas HaRambam. The Rambam says if it was on the 3rd night and you didn't have 30, it's the 3rd night, you had 10 people in your house. You didn't have 30 candles, according to the Shittas HaRambam. I only had 25. And I lit the 25 and now someone in the middle while it's lit brought me 5 more. The Rambam has a shaila in the tshuva. Do you add 5 after they're lit? And the Rambam has a very intricate tshuva to explain, do you light the 5? Do you add the 5 or you don't add the 5? So Chaim Kanievsky, forget about that part of the tshuva. But how did you light 25? The Rambam is condoning 25. So you see, not like the Mishnah Berurah. So Chaim Kanievsky Shlit, I have a ride from the Rambam. I didn't want to write Rambam because I didn't want to chepazach so stark with the Mishnah Berurah. I didn't want to bother the Mishnah Berurah so much. It's connected to Rambam. So I wrote Ayin Ba'avi Ezri. That's what he wrote back to Moshe Mordechai Schulzinger. My mamish almost fell off my feet when I saw this. What's the reason of the Mishnah Berurah that on the 5th night, if you have 4, you don't light it? What's the reason? Because you can't see the nights. What's 4? According to the Rambam's shita that you light 30, 10 the first night, 20 the second night, third night. We spoke out from the Rambam. You also don't see the nights. So according to the Rambam, of course the Mishnah Berurah would be masking. The Mishnah Berurah would agree. You light as much as you can. There he would agree to Rav Shach. The only reason he argues is lididenu, according to our shita. So what's will Morad Chaim Kanievsky? Chayos Mamish HaPella. So I answered that Pella with another Pella, and I'm going to finish in 1 minute. Mamish, I answered that Pella with another Pella. When I was learning by my rabbi, going to David Salvation, because that's how we were learning the prokim in Masechtas Vachim about Zrikas. That by a korban you makabel dam. After you makabel dam, you zorik the dam. So usually you can either do 1 or 2, and lechatchila you do 4. Someone in yeshiva was going around clearing a question, posing a question. What happened if you collected enough dam for 3? Do you use 3, or do you go back to your 2? And he decided to write a letter to Moran Chaim Kanievsky Shlita. I don't want to date myself. This was approximately 38 years ago. And he wrote the letter to Reb Chaim Kanievsky. And you know what Reb Chaim Kanievsky wrote him back? Kedarke B'Kaidish on a postcard. He wrote back, Ayin Mishnah Berurah Hilchos Chanukah Simin Tov Reish Ayin Vav Sifkot Nei. That on the 5th night, if you had 4, you don't light 4. Atkan. The same thing. I had Mamish HaPella. What is the Vart to Dimyan? Over here, the Mishnah Berurah is because of nights. So you can't ascertain the nights. What does this have to do with it? Bahanira, that Reb Chaim Kanievsky has a different Havon in the Mishnah Berurah. It's not about seeing the nights. It's about keeping the Takonis Chachamim. The Takonis Chachamim said 1 the first night, 2 the second night, 3 the third night, 4 the 4th night, and 5th the 5th night. Not the Mishnah Berurah is not worried about you won't see the nights. The Mishnah Berurah holds that's the Takoneh. The Takoneh is to do what the Chazal said on Cheshbenis. So you can't go say, oh, I have 4, let me use 4. There's a Takoneh of 5, which that could work with what we said before. Maybe because Al Kiddush Hashem, that's part of it. Listening to the Chachamim. And if you listen to the Chacham, that's what you do. Im Kei Reb Chaim Kanievsky said, the same would be by Zrika, and the same would be on the Takonis Chachamim, on the Zrikas, and the same would be according to the Rambam. So we see this strain of thought of Moran Reb Chaim Kanievsky Shlita, that the whole Yisoid of Ner Chanukah is doing the Takonah. And Bemis it's mashmin the Rambam. The Rambam says, if you have 10 people in your house, the first night you light 10, second night you light 20, third night you light 30, the 4th night you light 40, until the 8th night you have 80. I once heard from a Rebbe of mine, I go into Michal Shork in Shlita, when I was a Bacher, he asked, the Rambam was teaching you math? The Rambam should have said, light 10 and add 10 for each night. Why does the Rambam say 10, 20, 30, till you have 80? He said his own teretz, or Shorkin. I thought the teretz is that's what the Rambam's saying. The Rambam's saying not like that tshuva. The Rambam's saying 10, 20, 30, 40. Mach nicht kein Cheshbenes. Ich mach the Cheshben for dir. And if you have 25 on the 3rd night, you don't like 25. So, Baruch Hashem, we're here together. We're on Chanukah. I want to thank you, Didi, going to Megadis Shlita for always pushing us to be able to do this. And Bez Hashem, we'll be able to get together in Eretz Yisrael